Commander Jack Morrison stood in the command center of Sentinel Prime, watching the screens that showed his certain death approaching. The Vakreen Armada filled the display with 3,000 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They moved through space like a swarm of metal insects, and they were coming to end everything. Jack was 43 years old. He had a daughter on Earth who was probably already dead. Mars had fallen 3 weeks ago. The moon bases went silent yesterday. Earth's defense platforms were burning in orbit right now. Sentinel Prime was the last military station humanity had left, floating out here near Neptune where nobody important lived anymore. The station shook as another blast hit the shields. Red lights flashed across every panel. Lisa Grant sat at her communications station, her hands moving across the controls even though there was nobody left to call. She was 26 and had joined the Defense Force to see the stars. Now she would die among them. "Commander, shields at 15%, someone called out. Jack didn't bother to look. It didn't matter. They had maybe 10 minutes left before the Vakreen broke through and turned Sentinel Prime into dust. "Lisa," Jack said quietly. She looked up at him. Her face was pale but calm. Everyone on this station knew what was coming. They had known for days. "I need you to send something for me." "A message to Earth?" she asked. "Sir, I don't think anyone down there can receive any more. The satellites are gone." "Not to Earth," Jack said. He pulled a small data chip from his pocket. He had been carrying it for 2 days. Ever since he knew this moment would come. "I want you to broadcast this on every frequency we have. Use all our remaining power if you need to." Lisa took the chip and plugged it into her system. Her eyes went wide as she saw what it contained. "Commander, this is everything. Music, books, art, science, history. This is our entire cultural database." "I know what it is," Jack said. The station shook again, harder this time. Somewhere below them, something exploded. The lights flickered. "The Vakreen are going to erase us. They've erased 17 other species before us, but I want someone out there to know we existed. I want them to know we weren't just another extinct race. We were human." Lisa nodded slowly. Her hands moved across the controls, preparing the transmission. Jack walked over to the communications panel and leaned close to the microphone. The command center had gone quiet. Everyone was watching him. He took a breath and started recording. "To whoever finds this message. My name is Jack Morrison. I'm a commander in the Human Defense Force, and I'm about to die. My species is about to die. The Vakreen Armada is outside our last station right now, and there's nothing we can do to stop them. We knew this was coming. We're young. We only reached the stars 200 years ago. We're not strong enough to fight them." Another explosion rocked the station. Jack gripped the edge of the console to stay standing. "But I want you to know something about us. We knew we couldn't win. We could have run. Some of our ships did run, scattered out into deep space where maybe they'll survive a few more years. But most of us stayed. We stayed because this is our home. We stayed because running didn't feel right. We stayed because even if we're going to die, we wanted to face it standing up." The shields dropped to 10%. Jack could hear the metal walls around him groaning under the stress. "In this transmission, you'll find everything we made. Our music, our stories, our discoveries, every moment of joy and every piece of beauty we created in our short time among the stars. We laughed, we loved, we built things that mattered to us. And when the end came, we didn't beg, we didn't hide. This is humanity. Please remember us." Jack stopped recording. He looked at Lisa. She had tears running down her face, but her hands were steady as she prepared to send the message. "Send it," Jack said. "Everything we have left. Burn out every transmitter if you have to." Lisa pressed the button. The station's lights dimmed as massive amounts of power redirected to the communications array. The transmission launched on every frequency humans knew, spreading out into space in all directions. Radio waves, quantum signals, even old-fashioned electromagnetic broadcasts. Humanity's entire story, flying away from them at the speed of light. "Transmission away," Lisa said softly. "It's done." Jack nodded. He turned back to the main screen to watch the Vakreen ships come closer. At least they had done something. At least someone might find that message someday and know that humans had been here. Then something impossible happened. The Vakreen Armada stopped moving. Every single ship in that massive fleet just froze in space. Their engines were still running, their lights were still on, but they weren't coming closer anymore. They sat there, 3,000 warships, completely still. "What's happening?" someone asked. Nobody answered because nobody knew. The command center was silent except for the beeping of damaged systems. Jack stared at the screen, not understanding what he was seeing. Then Lisa gasped. "Commander, I'm receiving a response." "A response? From who?" "From them," Lisa said, her voice shaking. "From the Vakreen. They're responding to our transmission." Jack moved to her station. On her screen, numbers were appearing. Not words. Just pure mathematics, equations that seemed to mean nothing and everything at once, an acknowledgement, a pause. A question. The Vakreen Armada, the unstoppable force that had destroyed 17 civilizations, had stopped to listen to humanity's final message. And now they were answering. Jack looked around the command center at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders, waiting for answers. He had none. He had expected to be dead by now. "Keep monitoring," he finally said. "And somebody fix those shields. I don't think we're done here yet." Fleet Commander Jathik stood on the bridge of the Dominion, the largest warship in the Vakreen Armada, and experienced something completely new. Doubt. For 300 years, the Vakreen had swept across this region of space like a cleansing fire. They were predators. They were strong. The other species they encountered were prey. This was the natural order of things. The strong consumed the weak. The Vakreen had never questioned it before. But then this human transmission had reached their ships. Jathik's body was covered in dark scales that shifted colors based on emotion. Right now they were flickering between the deep blue of focus and the strange purple that meant confusion. The commander's 4 eyes watched the data stream that continued to pour from the human station. Music, images, stories, information. So much information. The humans knew they were dying. The transmission made that clear. Yet they had chosen to send this instead of begging for mercy. They had chosen to be remembered rather than to plead for survival. Jathik could not understand it. In Vakreen culture, only the strong mattered. Only those who survived deserved to be remembered. Weakness was erased and forgotten. But these humans had accepted their weakness, accepted their death, and then done something that the Vakreen had no words for. They had tried to make their existence mean something beyond survival. "Commander," one of the bridge officers said, "the fleet is waiting for your order to complete the assault. The human station's shields are failing." Jathik looked at the tactical display. Sentinel Prime was helpless. One more attack would destroy it completely. The commander's claws tapped against the command console, a nervous gesture that Vakreen were not supposed to show. "Hold position," Jathik said. The bridge went silent. Every Vakreen officer turned to stare at their commander. The purple in Jathik's scales deepened. "Commander?" the officer asked carefully. "Did you say hold?" "Yes, hold position. I need to think." This was unprecedented. Vakreen did not hesitate. Vakreen did not think about prey. They consumed it and moved on. But Jathik kept hearing the human commander's words in the transmission. "This is humanity. Remember us." Why would prey want to be remembered by predators? Jathik made a decision that would change everything. "Prepare a small ship. I'm going to that station." The bridge erupted in clicking and hissing sounds. Vakreen language was hard for most species to understand, but the meaning was clear: shock, disbelief, concern. "Commander, that is not safe," the officer protested. "We should destroy them and continue." "No," Jathik said, and the commander's scales turned the solid red of absolute authority. "I want to understand what I heard. Prepare the ship." On Sentinel Prime, Jack Morrison was trying to make sense of a situation that made no sense. The Vakreen had been sitting still for 2 hours now. His engineers, led by Ben Carter, had managed to get the shields back to 40%. It wasn't much, but it was better than being completely defenseless. "Commander," Lisa called out, "a small ship just separated from their main fleet. It's approaching us." Jack felt his stomach tighten. "Battle stations! Prepare for—" "Sir, they're broadcasting a signal. It's a request to dock. I think they want to board us." "They want to board?" Jack repeated. "Why would they board? They could just blow us up." "I don't know, sir, but the signal keeps repeating. It's using our own protocols, like they copied it from our transmission." Jack thought fast. Every instinct told him this was a trap. But if the Vakreen wanted them dead, they'd already be dead. Something had changed when they sent that message. He needed to find out what. "Grant them permission to dock," Jack said, "but I want armed security teams at the airlock. If they try anything, we'll show them humans can still fight." 20 minutes later, Jack stood in the docking bay with 12 armed soldiers behind him. The airlock hissed open, and 3 Vakreen warriors stepped through. Jack had seen pictures of the Vakreen before, but seeing them in person was different. They were massive, almost 8 feet tall, covered in scales that seemed to shift colors constantly. They had 4 arms, 4 eyes, and moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. Each one carried weapons that could probably destroy the entire docking bay. The lead Vakreen stepped forward. Its scales were dark blue with flickers of purple. When it spoke, the words came from a device on its chest that translated Vakreen clicks and hisses into human language. "I am Fleet Commander Jathik. I lead the armada that surrounds your station." Jack kept his voice steady. "I'm Commander Jack Morrison. I lead what's left of humanity's defense force. Why are you here?" Jathik tilted its head in a way that might have been curiosity. "I listened to your transmission. All of it. The music, the art, the message at the beginning. I have a question that I need answered." "Ask," Jack said. "Why did you not run?" Jathik asked. The translation device made the question sound almost gentle. "Your ships could have fled to the dark spaces between stars. Your people could have scattered. We might never have found all of you. Why did you stay and send beauty when you should have sent fear?" Jack thought about his daughter, about Earth, about every human who had ever looked up at the stars and dreamed of what was out there. "Because we wanted whoever came after to know that we mattered," Jack said. "We knew we were going to die, but we didn't want to be just another extinct species that nobody remembered. We're human. We made things. We loved things. We had stories worth telling. If our music and our art could outlive us, then we wouldn't really be gone. We'd still matter. Do you understand?" Jathik's scales flickered rapidly through several colors. Purple, blue, a strange orange that might have meant something like wonder. "No," the Vakreen commander said slowly. "I do not understand. In my culture, only the strong matter. Only those who survive deserve to be remembered. You accepted that you were weak. You accepted death. Yet you speak of mattering. You speak of meaning beyond survival. This is not logical." "Maybe logic isn't everything," Jack said. "Maybe there's value in more than just being strong." Jathik stood silent for a long moment. The other 2 Vakreen warriors watched their commander carefully. Finally, Jathik spoke again. "I have stopped the Armada. I will not complete the conquest of your species. Not yet. I want to understand this concept you present. This idea that meaning exists beyond strength. It troubles me. It interests me. It makes me question things that the Vakreen have never questioned. Jack felt his heart pounding. You're not going to destroy us? Not today, Jathik said, but I cannot speak for the entire Armada. Many of my commanders believe this hesitation is weakness. There will be conflict among my people about what to do with yours. I need time to think. I need time to understand what your transmission meant. The Vakreen commander turned to leave, then stopped and looked back at Jack. Your message said to remember you. I will remember. Whether that saves your species or not, I cannot yet say. Then Jathik and the other Vakreen walked back through the airlock and were gone. The news spread through what remained of humanity like electricity through water. The Vakreen had stopped. They weren't attacking. Nobody knew what it meant, but for the first time in months, people had something they hadn't dared to feel before. Hope. Captain Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the Defiant Hope. A generation ship that had been fleeing through deep space for 3 weeks. Her crew of 2,000 civilians had watched their home system burn behind them. Now her communications officer was telling her something impossible. Say that again, Kate said carefully. The Armada stopped, Captain. Commander Morrison sent a transmission from Sentinel Prime. The Vakreen received it and just stopped moving. They've been sitting still for 5 days now. Kate looked at the scared faces around her. Families, children, the last survivors of the Mars colonies. They deserved to know. Set a course back toward Neptune, she ordered. If there's a chance, any chance at all, we need to take it. Deep below the ice in Antarctica, Director Chris Palmer stood in a bunker that had become Earth's government. The old capitals were gone. Washington, Beijing, Moscow, London, all burning or occupied. Palmer had been a diplomat before the war. Now he was the closest thing humanity had to a leader, chosen because he was alive and someone had to make decisions. His assistant ran into the room holding a tablet. Director, the Vakreen are requesting a meeting, an actual negotiation. They want to talk. Palmer sat down heavily. He was 56 years old and felt like he was 100. Where? They suggested the old mining station in the asteroid belt, Neural Ground. They'll bring their fleet commander. They're asking us to send our highest authority. That's me, Palmer said quietly. I guess that's me now. He looked at the tablet showing Earth from orbit, cities in ruins, forests burning, oceans poisoned by falling debris. Get me a ship, and get me every expert we have left. Scientists, engineers, anyone who might help us figure out what the Vakreen want. 1 week later, Palmer stood in the docking bay of a station that had been abandoned for 20 years. They had named it Last Chance Station, because that's what it was. The human delegation was small. Palmer, Dr. Emma Walsh, their best physicist, 3 armed guards who knew their weapons were useless against Vakreen technology, and Commander Jack Morrison, who had started all of this with his transmission. The Vakreen arrived in a ship that could have destroyed the station with 1 shot. Jathik emerged with 6 other Vakreen commanders, their scales showing various colors that Palmer had learned meant different things. Jathik's were still flickering between blue and purple, uncertainty and curiosity. I am Chris Palmer, he said, forcing his voice to stay level. I represent humanity. I am Fleet Commander Jathik. I represent the Armada. The Vakreen commander gestured around the bare metal room. This place is strange. Meeting like this is strange. My species does not negotiate with prey, yet here we are. Here we are, Palmer agreed. Why? Because your transmission troubled me, Jathik said. The other Vakreen commanders shifted slightly, their scales flickering red in what might have been disagreement. Your species accepted death but wanted to be remembered. You sent beauty instead of fear. This concept has divided my fleet. Some, like me, want to understand it. Others say this hesitation is weakness and demand we complete our purpose. Your purpose being killing us all, Palmer said flatly. Yes, Jathik said without emotion. That is what we do. That is what we have always done. But I am starting to question whether it is what we should do. Palmer felt a tiny spark of something in his chest. Not quite hope, but close. Then let's talk about alternatives. They talked for 6 hours. Palmer learned things about the Vakreen he had never known. They weren't mindless killers. They had a society, a culture, a set of beliefs based entirely on strength and survival. They conquered because they could. They destroyed because weakness offended them. But they had never questioned it before because they had never encountered a species that made them want to question. Palmer made his proposal knowing it was insane, but having no other choice. We have nothing left to bargain with except knowledge, he said. Humanity developed separately from your conquered territories. We thought differently. We created differently. Let us survive, and we'll share everything we know. Technology, science, art, philosophy, all of it. Why would we need anything from a weak species? One of the other Vakreen commanders asked, its scales solid red with disdain. Dr. Emma Walsh stepped forward. She was 32 years old and had spent her entire career developing theories nobody had time to test during the war. Now she opened her tablet and showed them equations. This is quantum slipstream theory, she said. We've been working on it for 50 years. It's not complete, but the math shows it could cut faster than light travel time by half. Maybe more. We focused on efficiency and creativity because we couldn't match you in raw power. But our weakness forced us to think differently. Jathik leaned forward, all 4 eyes focused on the equations. The purple in the commander's scales intensified. This is possible? We think so, Emma said. We never had the resources to build it, but if you help us, we could finish the research. And you would share this with us, even though we came to destroy you? If it means our species survives, Palmer said. Yes. The Vakreen commanders spoke among themselves in their clicking language. Palmer couldn't understand the words, but he could see the disagreement in their color-shifting scales. Finally, Jathik turned back to them. I will present your offer to the fleet, but I will add a condition. You must prove that your survival has value to us. Words and theories are not enough. What do you want? Palmer asked. We have an enemy, Jathik said. The Krill Dominion threatens our territory from the Galactic East. In 1 month, they will attack the colony world of Karesh-Nor. 2 million Vakreen civilians live there. If humanity can help us defend that world using your different way of thinking, your creativity, your unconventional tactics, then I will have proof that your species deserves to live. Palmer looked at Jack Morrison. The commander's face was grim but determined. They both knew what this meant. Humanity would have to help their would-be destroyers win a war. They would have to become allies with monsters. But it was the only path to survival. We'll do it, Palmer said. Give us access to your tactical data. Let our people work with yours. We'll find a way to save Karesh-Nor. And if you fail? Jathik asked. Then at least we'll fail fighting, Palmer said. That's more than we expected to have when this started. Jathik's scales flickered through several colors before settling on a deep blue. You are a strange species. Perhaps that is why you are worth studying. You have 1 month. Do not waste it. The meeting ended. As the Vakreen left the station, Emma walked over to Palmer and Jack. Can we actually do this? She asked quietly. Can we help them win a war in 1 month? I don't know, Palmer admitted, but it's better than the alternative. Jack looked out the window at the Vakreen fleet in the distance. We sent a message asking to be remembered. Now we have to prove we deserve to be. 1 month. Let's make it count. The system the humans called Broken Stars looked like something out of a nightmare. A dying red giant sun burned in the center, casting everything in blood-colored light. Koreshinor orbited close to the edge of the star's death throes, a world of dark rock and underground cities where 2 million Vakreen lived. Commander Jack Morrison stood in the war room aboard a Vakreen command ship, surrounded by warriors who would have killed him a month ago. Now they watched him with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity as he studied the tactical displays. "The Krill fleet will arrive in 6 hours, Jack said, pointing at the projection. 800 warships. You have 300 here to defend. Traditional tactics say you'll lose. Then we fight until we die," one of the Vakreen commanders growled. "That is our way." "It doesn't have to be," Jack said. He looked at Lieutenant Sophie Drake, a young tactical officer who had survived the Mars siege. She brought up new data on the display. "We've been studying how humans fight when we're outnumbered. We call it asymmetric warfare. Hit where the enemy is weak. Avoid where they're strong. Make them fight on your terms, not theirs." Jathik leaned forward, scales flickering with interest. "Explain." Sophie took over. "The Krill fleet is massive, but they need supplies and reinforcements. We traced their staging areas, 3 supply depots and systems behind their lines. If we destroy those before the main battle, they'll arrive here disorganized and undersupplied." "That is impossible," a Vakreen commander said. "Those depots are deep in Krill territory. We would never reach them in time." "We would with the quantum slipstream drives," Jack said. "Dr. Walsh finished the prototypes yesterday. We have 3 ships ready, Hope, Defiance, and Legacy. They can jump to Krill space, hit the depots, and jump back before the enemy even knows we're there." "It is suicide," another Vakreen said. "Maybe," Jack admitted, "but it gives us a chance. And right now, a chance is all we have." Jathik's scales shifted to solid blue. "Decision made. Do it. But I want Vakreen warriors on those ships. If humans are willing to die for our world, we will die alongside you." 6 hours of preparation felt like 6 minutes. Captain Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of Legacy, the ship she had commanded since fleeing Mars. Now it had been retrofitted with technology that shouldn't exist, built by desperate humans and curious Vakreen working side by side. Ben Carter, the engineer from Sentinel Prime, checked the quantum drive one last time. His hands were shaking. "This is experimental. We've never tested it at combat speeds. The margin for error is basically 0. "Then we won't make errors," Kate said calmly. She looked at her crew, 15 humans and 5 Vakreen warriors, strange allies, unlikely friends. "Everyone ready?" They were. Kate gave the order. Legacy jumped. The sensation was indescribable. Normal, faster-than-light travel felt like falling. Quantum slipstream felt like being erased and rewritten. For one terrible moment, Kate wasn't sure if she existed anymore. Then reality snapped back, and they were deep in Krill territory. "Target acquired!" Sophie called out from Hope, her voice crackling over the quantum link. "Beginning attack run!" All 3 ships hit the supply depots simultaneously. The Krill defenses hadn't expected anything to appear that deep in their space. Missiles launched, bombs dropped, stations exploded, and then the 3 human ships jumped away before the Krill could respond. 2 of them made it back cleanly. Legacy didn't. "Quantum drive is damaged," Ben shouted as alarms screamed through the ship. "The jump calculations are wrong. We're going to miss Koreshinor by light years if we don't compensate." Kate's hands flew across the controls. She had been flying ships since she was 20. She knew every equation, every possibility, and she knew they were in trouble. "Can we make it back?" she asked. "Maybe," Ben said, "if we reroute all power and I can stabilize the quantum field. But Captain, the reactor is overloading. Even if we make the jump, we won't survive long after." Kate made her decision in seconds. "Get everyone to the escape pods. I'll pilot us back alone." "Captain," Ben started. That's an order, Carter. Get them off this ship. I'll see you on Koreshnor. 20 minutes later, Legacy limped back to the defense zone just as the Krill fleet arrived. The battle started immediately, 800 ships against 300 defenders, but Jack's plan had worked. The Krill were disorganized. Their supplies were limited. They didn't have the reinforcements they expected. Human tactics combined with Vakrine's strength created something neither species could have achieved alone. Drone swarms confused enemy targeting. Asteroid fields became weapons. Distributed command networks let ships adapt instantly to changes. But it wasn't enough. The Krill had numbers. They pushed forward, overwhelming the defense platforms one by one. Then their dreadnought arrived, a ship so massive it made everything else look like toys. Jack watched from the command center as the dreadnought began systematically destroying every defense they had. Koreshnor would fall. 2 million Vakrine would die. And humanity's one chance for survival would end. Then Legacy appeared on his screen, barely holding together, its reactor readings showing critical overload. Kate Sullivan's voice came over the communication channel, calm and clear. "Morrison, this is Sullivan. Legacy is finished. Reactor is going to explode in about 3 minutes. But I've been doing some math. If I can make one more quantum jump and place it correctly, I can take out that dreadnought." "Kate, the navigation computer says a precision jump like that is impossible," Jack said, his throat tight. "You'll need perfect calculations with zero margin for error." "I know," Kate said. "Tell Palmer that humanity did what we said we'd do. We proved we matter. And Jack, tell everyone that we're still worth remembering." "Kate, wait." But Legacy jumped. The ship vanished from normal space and reappeared inside the Krill dreadnought, materializing directly on the bridge. The damaged reactor detonated a microsecond later. The dreadnought tore itself apart from the inside. Metal screamed. Fire bloomed in the vacuum, and the massive ship broke into 1,000 pieces. The Krill fleet faltered. Their flagship was gone, destroyed by an impossible attack. Their coordination collapsed. The Vakrine defenders pressed the advantage, and the Krill began to retreat. Jack stood in the command center, watching the battle turn, knowing that Kate Sullivan had just saved 2 million lives by sacrificing herself. Around him, Vakrine warriors were making sounds he had never heard before, a kind of clicking that the translator didn't have words for. "What are they saying?" he asked Jathik. The fleet commander's scales had turned a color Jack had never seen, pure white, shot through with gold. "They are honoring a warrior," Jathik said quietly. "Kate Sullivan was not Vakrine, but she died with more courage than most of my people will ever know. We have no word for what she did. In our language, we only honor those who survive, but for her, we will create new words." The battle ended an hour later. The Krill retreated. Koreshnor was saved. And humanity had proven its worth in the most painful way possible. The Vakrine Collective met in a space station at the edge of their territory, a massive structure that housed their ruling council. Fleet Commander Jathik stood before 300 leaders and told them a story that the Vakrine had never heard before. A story about prey that became partners, about weakness that revealed strength, about a species that chose to be remembered instead of choosing to beg. The debate lasted for 3 weeks. Some admirals demanded the original plan continue. Humans were prey. This was the natural order. Others, including many who had fought at Broken Stars, argued that humanity had proven something more valuable than strength. They had proven they could think differently, create differently, and fight differently. They had proven they mattered. In the end, the vote was close. But the collective decided humanity would be granted protectorate status. Earth would be restored. The colonies would be returned. Human advisors would work alongside Vakrine forces. It wasn't equality, not yet, but it was survival. It was a future. Director Chris Palmer stood in the ruins of Geneva, where the United Nations had met 200 years ago. The city was destroyed, but workers were already clearing the rubble. Ships filled the sky, both human and Vakreen, working together to rebuild what war had torn apart. Palmer broadcast a message to every remaining human, whether they were on Earth, hiding in deep space, or scattered across abandoned colonies. "We survived," he said simply, "against odds that should have been impossible. We faced extinction and found a path forward. Billions of our people are gone. Worlds we loved are scarred. Heroes like Kate Sullivan gave everything so that the rest of us could have a tomorrow. We will never forget what we lost, but we also won't forget what we gained. We proved that humanity matters, not because we're the strongest, not because we won every battle, but because we told our story so well that even our enemies wanted to hear how it ended. And now, that story continues." Jack Morrison stood on a new station built in orbit of Neptune, where Sentinel Prime once defended humanity's edge. They had built a memorial here, a massive structure that played Lisa Grant's original transmission on continuous loop. Every ship that passed through this system heard it. Jack Morrison's voice, humanity's final message, the message that changed everything. Jack had been promoted to commander of the Joint Human-Vakreen Fleet Integration Program. He spent his days teaching Vakreen officers about human tactics while learning Vakreen strategies in return. It was strange work. Sometimes he still looked at his new allies and remembered when they had come to kill everyone he loved. But he also remembered Jathik stopping the Armada. He remembered Vakreen warriors fighting beside Kate Sullivan. He remembered that even enemies could change. Ben Carter worked in a laboratory on Mars, which was slowly being restored to life. He was perfecting the quantum slipstream technology that Kate had died testing. Every ship that used the new drives carried her name somewhere on the hull. Legacy Drive, they called it, a reminder that progress always had a cost. On Koreshinor, they built something the Vakreen had never built before, a monument to honor those who weren't Vakreen. It showed Kate Sullivan standing on the bridge of her ship, and the inscription read in both languages. "She was not of our people, but she saved our world. We create new words to honor her. We remember." Jathik attended the dedication ceremony. The fleet commander's scales had permanently changed after Broken Stars, developing streaks of white that never faded. Other Vakreen said it meant Jathik had been touched by something beyond strength. The commander didn't argue with them. "I listened to your transmission again yesterday," Jathik told Jack at the ceremony. "The one you sent from Sentinel Prime. I understand it now. You wanted to matter, not just to survive, but to mean something. To leave something beautiful behind. My species built an empire on strength and conquest. But we never built anything like what you sent in that message. We never created beauty just for the sake of beauty. We never loved things for the sake of loving them. Perhaps that is why we needed to stop and listen." "And now?" Jack asked. "Now we learn," Jathik said. "Your species teaches us to think differently. Our species teaches you to survive better. Perhaps together we become something neither of us could be alone." Far from Earth, in uncharted space, other species picked up humanity's original transmission. They listened to the music, read the stories, studied the science, and they learned that something impossible had happened. The Vakreen Armada, the unstoppable force that had erased 17 civilizations, had stopped for these humans. Messages began arriving at Earth from across the galaxy. Questions, offers of contact, expressions of curiosity, and always the same theme. How did you survive? How did you turn your executioners into allies? Dr. Emma Walsh, now leading Earth's first diplomatic science division, received these messages and compiled responses. The answer was always simple, but somehow hard to explain. "We told our story, and we told it so well that even our enemies wanted to know how it ended. We didn't just fight for survival. We fought for meaning, and in the end, that made all the difference." 10 years after the Armada stopped, Jack Morrison retired from active service. He spent his final day in uniform at the Neptune Memorial, watching the transmission play one more time. His own voice, younger and more afraid, echoing across space. "We knew we couldn't win. We're the youngest species to reach the stars. But we want you to know we were here. We laughed. We loved. We created beauty. And when the end came, we didn't beg. This is humanity. Remember us." A young officer approached him, a human woman who had been a child during the war. "Commander Morrison, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you think we would have survived if you hadn't sent that message? If you had just tried to fight?" Jack thought about it, about Jathik stopping the fleet, about Kate Sullivan's sacrifice, about how one desperate act of defiance had cascaded into something nobody could have predicted. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I know that fighting wasn't enough. We needed something more. We needed to show them who we were, not just what we could do." Maybe that's the lesson. Survival isn't just about strength. It's about being worth remembering, being worth saving, being worth the universe's time. The young officer nodded and walked away. Jack stood alone for a few more minutes, watching Earth rise over the curve of Neptune. The planet was healing. Cities were growing. Forests were coming back. Ships moved between the stars, human and Vakreen flying together. Humanity's final message hadn't been final at all. It had been an introduction, a calling card to the galaxy, a statement that said, "We are here, we matter, and we're not going away." Jack smiled. They had wanted to be remembered. Instead, they had become something better. They had become impossible to forget. Far above him, the transmission continued broadcasting, sent out on every frequency humanity knew. And somewhere out in the infinite darkness of space, someone new was listening. Someone new was hearing humanity's story and learning that survival could mean more than just staying alive. It could mean creating something beautiful. It could mean changing the unchangeable. It could mean making even your enemies stop and wonder. The message played on. It would play forever. A reminder that humanity had faced the end with dignity and defiance, and in doing so, had written a new beginning. Not just for themselves, but for everyone who heard their song and decided it was worth protecting. This was humanity, and the universe was starting to remember.